Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to Laratips. In today's video, we'll be discussing about HTTP client in Laravel. Basically, with the help of HTTP client, we can send HTTP request from within our server. Whenever you install Laravel, HTTP client is also by default installed. And it just provides an expressive and minimal API on top of Gazelle HTTP client. So if you are happy with Gazelle HTTP, then you don't have to use it, but it has a very expressive API. So by default, it is already installed on Laravel, but let's say in your old projects, you have removed the Gazelle HTTP client, then you can again install it, okay, with this command. I have prepared some API endpoints, so let's test it out. So here, if I go to here, this API.php here routes and API.php, I have made 200, 201, 401, 500 and some test APIs, okay? So let's start with this 200. So here in this app, so here I have this API, okay? So this, I can call this route using this laravel.test/API/200. So whenever I call this route and just refresh here, now you can see here guys, I can see a lot of information and I'll explain you everything. So these are all the functions that are available to us when we use this HTTP client. So first of all, whenever we send an HTTP request to this API endpoint, then we can get the body of that response like this. Whatever the response that the server has sent, it will be provided to us by this body in the raw format. So, and it looks like this. Since we have passed the JSON, so it is in the JSON encoded string. And this, there is also a JSON method by which we can get this JSON format of our response like this. And let's say the server responded with some data that cannot be passed into JSON, then it will just return null, okay, this JSON method. And this status will give us the status code of the response, which is 200 in this case, since it was successful. And if you see here guys, if we don't pass anything over here, then it will just pass 200, okay? The status code is 200 by default. And successful means that if the status code is above 200 and below 300, which means in the range of 200, then it will always give us true. And this failed, it will give us true if the status code is greater than or equal to 400. For the failed one, you can see here it is false because the status code is 200. And res OK will, response OK will give us true if the status code is 200. It must be exactly 200. So you can see here our status code is 200, so it is giving us true. And this client error, so if the status code is in the range of 400, then it will give us the client error, which will be true. So currently it is false. And server error means if the status code is in the range of 500, then it will give us true, but now here it is false, okay? And we can also get all the headers that have been passed as a response. So here we can see response headers, then we'll get all the headers in the form of array, okay, everything. But let's say we only want to get one specific header from the response, this, let's say cache control, then we can just say here, we can just say header and give the name of the cache, then it will give us only that, no cache private. You can see here it has the same value, okay? And you may think, how, from where did I get it? So everything is in the documentation, so you can see all these methods, okay? I'll show you here in the documentation. So here in the error handling, you can see here everything is mentioned over here. So I have done the 200 request. Now let's see 201, okay? If I do 201, then this response OK must be false and this successful should be true. So currently if you see here, this OK is true and successful both are true, but this OK will be false if it is not 200, okay? So now if I just refresh here, and you can see here guys, this OK is false over here and this status code is 201, which means that the successful is true and other all are false and every other data is same. And you can see here guys 201, so I have sent the message is SOP created, so you can also see the message SOP created in here, okay, as a JSON value. Okay, now let's look at 401. So now if we pass 401, this status will be 401, this successful will be false, fail will be true, OK will be false, client error will be true because it is in the range of 400, and server error will be false because it is not in the range of 500, okay? And let me remove this header now, we don't want this, okay? Now you can see here guys, the status is 401, successful is false, failed is true because everything that is greater than or equal to 400, it will be true. This OK is false, client error is true and server error is false, as I have said. Now let us go to 500. Now in this case, the server error will be true and the client error will be false. So if you closely look here, now you can see here server error is true and client error is false, and every other are as same as that of the 400 status code. Also in the case of 500, I'd like to show you something else, okay? So here, so let me just comment this out and just uncomment it. Here I am just taking or finding the shops and I am looking at the column name A, but there is no column A. Now let's see what happens if I refresh here. So you can see here, guys, we are getting so many things, and you can also see here, we can see the query also, and in the production environment, if you do it, then you will leak all your information. So for that, just go to .env and true to false. You can just write false in the app debug, and if you come here, now we can see here, guys, we can see the same HTML kind of information, but will not leak our information. But we don't want this kind of information in our response. Let's say we only want JSON response, then we can say here with headers like this, and you can also pass headers like this, okay guys? So here we can say accept application / JSON like this, okay, and A will be capital here. Now you can see here, guys, we can see the exact message in the JSON. We are not seeing any HTML code over there, and you can see here the status code is 500 and every other code is same as that we have seen in our previous 500 API. So let's say we also want to do some debugging in our response, then we can just say, let us just take for 200. Then before getting the API, we will just say here DD like this. Now you can see here, guys, we can get all the information that we want here, okay, like this. You can just debug it. And let's say you want to pass some parameter to the get request, then you can just pass it as an array like this. So here you can just say here A key will have the value of the B, and you can also do the same thing for the post request. For the post request, you will just pass the URL and you can pass data to the second parameter as an array. It's the same API. Also, I would like to show you one more thing here. So I'll just remove everything from here. And if I refresh, you can see the code I am seeing like this. But guys, if I do JSON, then you can see here I can see the data like this, but without writing JSON also we can access this data, okay? So we are getting this data in array form, yeah? Data, and let's say we want the first index data like this. Then if I refresh here, then you can see here, guys, I can get the first data like this. You don't have to just do JSON. Since this HTTP implements the arrayable interface of PHP, we can just do it like this. Also, now let me show you one more thing that you can do whenever there is an error in this API endpoint, okay? So let's say 500 or 400, something like that. Let me remove this parameter now and these as well. So now let's say $res and JSON like this. Now if I do it like this, we are getting here null. So just let me just uncomment this one and comment this one, and let me just come here. Then you can just see here it is just saying in a message as server error because we have passed from here server error, but you saw that in this one there was null, okay? But it is not throwing any exception. In a normal application, if there is some error, then it will throw an exception, but it is not throwing exception over here, okay? We have to always check the status code and see whether there is error or not. But if you want this thing to throw an exception, if there is any error in the API response, then you can just say here after response, you can just say throw like this. Just before the JSON, you can just call the throw like this. And now if I refresh here, now you can see here, guys, it is throwing this request exception. And whenever there is an error, you can just handle it. So it just depends upon the application whether you want to throw an exception or just check the status code and handle it. It's just depend on the application or your personal preference. Now let's look at retry and timeout. So if there is any error, 400 or 500 error in this range, then we can retry this HTTP, okay? So there is a built-in method for that. So let me remove this throw, and there is retry method. So we have to call this before get or post method like this, and let me just add it in the next line. So here how many times you want to retry. So let's say we want to retry for 5 times, and after how many milliseconds you want to retry. So after every 100 milliseconds we'll retry if there is a failure. So it will always be a failure, guys, because it returns a 500 response code from here. So if you see here like this, you have already seen here, so it is just returning 500 response code, so it will always be an error. So before a retry, let us see how long time it will take. So look at here, guys, it is just coming instantly. Okay, now after doing a retry, I'll just hit refresh. Now you can see here, guys, it took a little bit more time. So 100 millisecond into 5, because it has tried this API for the 5th time, but still it threw 500 error and it failed. It didn't fail in just one time. It tried for 5 times and it failed. And if there is a success, then it will not retry. Okay, so let's go for 200. And if I refresh here, so you can see here, guys, the data has come up here instantly. So it has not retried now. If there is a failure, then only it will retry, otherwise it will not retry. And there is also another timeout. And after how many seconds should this timeout? Okay, so let's say we want to time out after 2 seconds. So if this endpoint takes more than 2 seconds to return the data, then this thing will time out. Okay, so let's refresh here. Now it is not timing out, okay, because it is just returning the data in less than 2 seconds. So I have already prepared an endpoint for that also here, the test. Okay, guys. So here I'll just pass test and it will sleep for 10 seconds, and we have checked here only for 2 seconds, which means that actual timeout will occur, and after that this function will not execute. So let's say, guys, for example, something happens in this API endpoint and it took about 30 seconds to get the response, then it will impact your other API endpoints also. So for that you need to have this timeout. So here, guys, if I just refresh here, now you can see here, guys, after 2 seconds it has thrown this connection exception. Okay, if there is a timeout, then it will throw this connection exception. Now let us only sleep for 1 second. Okay, and now let us refresh the page. Now you can see here, guys, we can get the response, which means that there was no timeout. So which means that whenever we add this timeout, if there is a timeout, then it will throw an exception, but if there is any timeout, then it will just work as normal. Now, guys, let us look at the concurrent request. We can send requests to multiple endpoints at once, and it will call them asynchronously, not synchronously. So synchronous means that whenever we get the response from the first, then we'll send request to the second, and whenever there is a response from the second one, we'll send request to the third one. So this is synchronous. But asynchronous means that it will send request to all these 3 endpoints at once and it will get the response, which means that it will be much more faster. So I have prepared an example for this also. So guys, here like this. So we have to use this pool, eliminate HTTP client pool, and I have 2 endpoints over here like this. Okay, so we can send endpoint like this, and to get the response we have to access it like this. So if there are 2 requests that has been sent, then we can just get them as 0 index, 1 index like this. Okay, because it will return an array with the response. So here, let's say 200 is giving us the array of data, so we can get it like this. So you can see here in the array of data. So these are all the list of shops that we are getting from here like this. Okay, and in the users we are just getting the users data. So I'll just comment. So now you can see here, we can see the users data like this. But let's say you don't want to access this at 0 and 1, then you can just say here, let's say as users like this, and instead of 1 you can just say here users like this, and you can see the same data over here. And also, guys, one thing to remember, that when every of these requests have been resolved, then only we can access the data from this response like this. Okay, since it is just sending concurrent requests, then it will not be slow, it will be very fast. Also, let's test that out. So let's say you need to send some 4 or 5 requests to some other external API endpoint and get data in your website, in your server side, and then again pass that data to the client side or something like that. Then you need to pass multiple HTTP requests to that API endpoint. So let's test that out. Okay, so here I am using this test API endpoint. So here I am just delaying every response by 2 seconds. Now I am sending it 5 times using this HTTP pool. Okay, it will send this concurrently. Now let's see how long it will take. So this difference in time, so it will give us the current time, and the difference in this time and that current time will give us the difference in seconds, how many seconds it has elapsed from starting to end. So here, guys, if I refresh here, Now you can see here guys, it took around only 3 seconds, but we have sent request to 5, which means that it should have taken 10 seconds delay, but it took only 3 seconds because it is passing this request concurrently or asynchronously. Now let's test this without using this pull. Okay, so here we'll say here get, and we'll pass this over here, and I'll remove this and I'll just duplicate it 5 times. Now let's see how long will it take. Okay, now you can see here guys, it is loading and loading and loading. Now look here guys, you can see here it took 5 seconds, which is obvious because there are 5 requests that we are sending and everything is delayed by 2 seconds. Now you can see here guys the usefulness of asynchronous request. Now you can see here guys how you can make your app a little bit faster using that pull method instead of just sending HTTP request for 5 times individually. Also guys, let us now look at some basic authentication steps that you can implement using HTTP facade. So guys, this is the API that I am getting from this httpbin.org. This is open source and we can just hit this API and get all kinds of HTTP get, post, delete, any kind of request. Now I'll look at authentication. Okay, so this is the URL. So whatever we pass here in the user and password, that will be the actual username and password of this API endpoint, okay, for basic authentication. So if we just pass that username and password, then it will authorize us, otherwise it will not authorize us. So now let us just pass this. Okay, so here I'll just call HTTP get since it is the get request. Okay, so now I'll just look at the status. Okay, and also let me dump this. Okay, and also let us look at the JSON response. Okay, now let me just reload the page. Now you can see here guys, it is giving us 401 unauthorized status code and the JSON is not. So if it is not authorized, then we don't care about the response. Now let's see how to pass username and password with basic authentication. So we can just say here with basic auth like this, and first will be username and second will be password. So username is username and second is password like this. And now if I refresh, now you can see here guys, I can see the status code as 200 and the JSON response is authenticated is true and user is the username. So this is how you do the basic authentication over here. And also guys, let's say the API endpoint is authenticated with a token. So in that case, we have to pass in the header, authentication header with barrier and space and token. So let me show you that one also. So this is the barrier, okay, BARER, barrier token. So instead of basic auth, we'll just say here barrier, and I'll just remove this, okay, here like this. So in this API endpoint, whatever we pass as a barrier token, it will just give us success, otherwise it will give us failure. Okay, so now here I am just not passing anything as a barrier token. Then if I refresh here, then you can see here guys, it is not authorizing me. So let's see how to do this by passing a header, and then there is also one optional helper method we can use. So we can say with headers, and we'll say here authorization, and we'll say here bearer and the token like this. Now if I just refresh the page, now you can see here guys, I'm authenticated, but instead of passing this whole everything, you can just pass the token like this. Okay, so we can just say here, let me remove this, with token like this, and we can just pass the token. Okay, now if I just refresh here, then you can see here I'm getting the same response. So passing the authorization header, and this is the same thing. And one more quick tip guys, last time we saw that we were passing some data here in the like this, like accept, and here we'll say application JSON like this. So we are doing like this, yeah, for our, let's say, let us do that for that also. Let's say so Laravel 8.test/API/200. okay, so we are doing this and we were just able to get this as a JSON response. So for 500 we were doing that. In case of 500, it was showing us some HTML. So in order to get that JSON response instead of HTML, we were just doing this. So let me just do it for 200 because I just wanted to show you how you can just remove this code, and there is a shortcut for this also here. Accept JSON like this, and if I reload, now you can share guys, I can see the same data over here.
So this was just a quick tip in the end.
So that's it for this video, guys. If I have missed anything out, then just let me know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and also hit subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.